there's kind of these two worlds. You've got the bodybuilders that are literally working on building muscles in their maximum capacity, which is really healthy, but they're ignoring the small muscles that are prone to injury. And then you got the PT world that's working with all the injured muscles, all the little weird ones in your shoulder and your hips and your spine that no one knows the names of. But they're not thinking like bodybuilders where they need, stress that muscle out and get it to enhance its strength with a particular pinpoint precision. I was in and out of PT a lot of times from racing dirt bikes, and, you often wreck and get injured. So, seeing the treatment they're giving me and also trying to go to the gym to stay in shape, I thought, man, there needs to be a specialty piece of strength equipment for physical therapy, because the bands just weren't making me strong enough, I felt. And a lot of their strengthening methods are literally hands-on, like the therapist is the resistance that you're pushing. And so I'm just doing that, doing martial arts, learning about rotational strength, and just really, really wanted to build that strength. So I went out and built the device, started with a little prototype, hired an engineer. I'm partially a mechanical engineer, but I couldn't finish up that degree. So that gave me a little leg up to get started, but it wasn't that bad. Wasn't that bad to get an engineer to draw up some stuff, build out a prototype, and have something in my hand to show and tell with therapists and chiropractors and things, and just see if I'm on the right track. And then I realized, man, I really need to know what I'm doing here so I could either go back to school for business or go back to school for physical therapy. And I thought I better just do the business, because physical therapy right now is a PhD. I'm not going to get a PhD for this project, but business is fun. So yeah, once I did that degree and iterated a couple prototypes, my college over here, University of New Mexico, they held a business plan competition. So I decided to finally pull it out of the garage and enter the competition. And I won that and went into some business accelerators and kind of pumping more money into it with prototypes and feedback, and then patents and trademark and beta testing in physical therapy clinics, and just trying to get the community around this project in a way that I can make sure that it's more likely to succeed rather than staying in, my garage or my office, so it's come around. It's come pretty far, it's not the cheapest endeavor to try and bootstrap, but when you have a passion, you just get in there and you just make it happen, literally sacrifice and make it happen.
Right. Well, I mean, walk me through, let's take it back to the injury. Do you mind talking to us about what kind of injury you have way back up?
Well, lots of different injuries. Sometimes you wreck and you just go flying and you don't know what you hurt. You just get back on your bike and keep racing. And then, so I had broken ankle, collarbone, scoliosis. My spine was a little side to side, arthritis in my shoulders and hips, just pains that were real deep and required some special therapy that was literally hands-on resistance. And that was the therapist I spoke to first. I was like, man, they should make a machine that does this and that and that. And he looked at me like, yeah, they really should make that machine.
Okay, so that is it. It's kind of creating a machine that will emulate as close as possible, or maybe as well as a human, right? Physical therapy and touch therapy. What's an example of that type of a therapy, right? Where a physical therapist is using their hands.
Yeah, so the one I'm thinking of specifically is a hip rotation. You'll be sitting on the edge of the therapy table, and the therapist there in front of you, and he'll literally grab your ankle and your knee, and you will kind of swing your ankle, side to side like this, and he will resist you. And of course, then your hip is rotating and you're activating particular muscles. So
yeah,
there is no machine for that. And through the time I learned a plethora of exercises, there are no standard machines.
That's fantastic. So you created, right? Necessity being the mother of invention. So you created this. Take us through kind of that invention journey. I bet, the machines that are behind you were not version 1. Did you work on this all on your own? How long did it get you to where you're like, hey, this is it. This is really the point where this model will work. I believe this is something I could sell.
Yeah. So it took about 10 years to get to where I'm at now. That's because of bootstrapping, each iteration of the prototype, engineering, and then having it built at a machine shop. At one point, it was cheaper for me to just buy a small machine shop that was going out of business and set up in there and start building these things and skipping the traditional engineering step. But yeah, 10 years. And I'd say it was interesting, the feedback, because at first my product was friction based. And, then I showed it to some therapists and they said, man, this is amazing. But if you could have it weight based, where you're lifting the weight and lowering the weight, but still in that circle, then you've got it. That's the best way to activate a muscle. So when iterated that, so probably about 4 years when I was really on track and hearing feedback that was like, this is great. This should be in every PT office. And then the iterations became, well, let's make it easier to use. Let's make it cheaper to manufacture. Let's make it a couple more bells and whistles and, things like that.
So I want to make sure that's crystal clear for our listeners. I mean, this is, and most projects like this are not overnight successes. This took dogged persistency for 10 years and took testing with specific users who would use this model to get to that perfection. I know you said it was a short, more like 4 or 5 years once you really got into a good rhythm. Did you work through NDAs with this one specific physical therapist? Did you partner with them? How did you get that in to be able to, put this in the hands of actual, therapists that could give you that feedback?
Yeah. So, well, I'm going to throw it in there. That first physical therapist that we had the conversation, I was his patient.
Okay.
He has never seen the device I've made. The ability to penetrate someone and get the feedback and get their time is so hard. I mean, these therapists are educated, PhD, and here I am a nobody, just trying to borrow 10 minutes of their time. So it continues to be such a hurdle. But sorry, I forget, what was your original question? I wanted to throw that one in there.
Well, let's see. I think it's important. I was just saying, that when you start talking about your product, maybe it was already patented or filed by the time you're communicating with these therapists. Is that true? Or is there a moment where there was, hey, you haven't totally filed this, it's still under confidentiality? How did you handle that?
Right. So in the very, very beginning, there was no NDAs. You're just getting some feedback, asking questions more from friends or acquaintances that were at my university. The university helped me out quite a bit with open doors and, giving me time. So
Which university, if you don't mind me asking?
UNM, University of New Mexico.
It's fantastic. Good. With you. And it was all fairly casual. There was no, technology transfer agreement or contracts between you and the professor. It was more casual.
Right. Real casual. I'd say at least 2 or 3 times I had several PhD, professors up in I had a big box truck at the time that was set up like a gym in the back. That's why I take around for feedback, so they came up in there, try it out, talk about what I should research, how I should use it, safely, stuff like this.
Okay.
No NDAs. I got it patent pending pretty early on with a super comprehensive patent that, it took me a couple weeks to write along with the help of an attorney. And, is it, I don't know, 80 or 90 pages, all the different ways you could build it and, all the what ifs that you can stuff in there. So yeah, once I had that pending, then I was much more likely or willing to have conversations without an NDA. And honestly, what I've learned since then is that most people do not have the desire or fortitude to steal something and take it this far, especially if it's already patent pending, but of course there's always risk, right? So
the USA, go ahead and walk us through what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so this is kind of my demo video. It's multifunction. It literally does all these things with the attachments that it comes with. It's circular, so
Yeah.
or consistent resistance all the way around that circle. And so, of course, the body, all of the joints move in circles. So we're literally, it's kind of an obvious solution to the problem. We have circular joints. We need circular resistance. And if you're pulling on a cable at the gym, you're getting a substandard exercise. It is useful for some things, linear exercise is useful for some things, but circular resistance is perfect for activating the muscle completely.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and this is a lot. So it's all basically one main device or piece of equipment, and it's just a matter of adjusting it up and down,
Yep.
and then you've got different handles. It looks like.
Yep. Different handles, different extensions. You got a short bar up to a long bar. That head right there,
Yeah.
it goes to all the different angles. Yeah.
Cool.
It literally
Very
gets.
It's very cool. Very cool product. Very innovative. Never seen anything like it. Yeah, and it, when we first started talking, it was like, oh, is this for like, just wrist resist, right? Is this for the wrist only, right? No, this is everything, right? This is comprehensive. Very cool.
Yeah, a lot of them are first in the world. So there's spin-off products. This machine in particular won't be for a gym. It's more for a trainer or a therapist to work with a client. This is pretty complicated, but the spin-off machines that do singular exercises, like for instance, the spine rotation, that's just for the gym. So you can walk up to it, do spine rotation, walk away.
So this was issued right in February 2020. So kind of at the height of COVID. Maybe you got I'm sure you got a story about how COVID affected you and whatnot, but this was issued, 5 years ago. So you've got 15 years of life left on this in terms of, excluding others from making, using, or selling. And you're not joking, 74 pages of spec. My gosh, they were quite thorough on this here. So this was awesome. And have you mentioned there's some copycats. Have you noticed any other infringers or folks that you thought might be coming close to infringing of what you're doing?
No, there's no copycats that I know of. Of course, my heart kind of stops when I see, somebody come out with, oh, we got the latest, greatest fitness invention ever. It's going to change the industry. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to do it. And then it's just more of the same, just a different color, or, oh, look, the screen has a new app or whatever. The industry is due for an overhaul. And that's basically what I'm trying to do, is inject that. You see people at the gym trying to do these exercises. They're pulling on a cable and stuff, trying to do rotator cuff or trying to do a wood chop or something. They're making a circular motion with a linear cable, and that's my jam, is bringing that to light, that like we can get a much better activation here. And I did take it out to University of Southern California for a few research studies, and twist resist is up to 40% more effective than anything they could throw at it. They were throwing manual therapy at it, bands, cables, free weights, and that circle is literally the game changer.
Okay. One thing on my mind we haven't talked much about yet. I mean, you've been at this for 10 years. Talk about having a truck, lots of equipment. I'm sure things got expensive. Let's talk about funding. How have you funded this, and how might you fund in the future?
So far, bootstrapping, that's been super hard on myself and my family. But, at this juncture, it would either require a investor, some sort of seed round or a round of investing to get it manufactured over in Asia, most likely. It's sad to say that, but I love America, but our manufacturing is expensive. So that's probably the plan, unless I exit to a larger competitor and let them take it to the world, basically. So that's the crossroads I'm at right now. I've got 10, you see a few of them behind me,
Right.
getting those out to the market for beta testing and develop a method is what I need to develop. I've actually got someone from UNM that's going to be taking that job to develop a method for the physical therapy offices.
That's really cool. So you're actually like going to provide the physical therapy offices not only with the product, but like the protocol for using it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
The protocol. Yeah. And that could bring some continued revenue. We sell a machine for whatever, 6 or 8,000 bucks. And then, we have to certify each therapist or trainer that's on it. And, that's something you learn in business school is you've got to, continue to harvest from that field somehow. But not only that, that will help keep the industry a little bit more standardized. I've learned the physical therapy industry is kind of the Wild West. There's no standardization for how they're going to fix your rotator cuff injury or whatever. So we're trying to offer some standardization, and hopefully that turns into some good research studies with universities and different institutions that can really put some science into it with numbers of patients and things like that.
Right. That's great.
It seems to be to me to be like a really great product. I mean, I can imagine using it and being able to focus just on that rotator cuff, right? Not have to worry about some of those stabilizing muscles or injury from losing the weight to the side or whatever. So I think it's really cool. I'm really glad to hear you've done this. And $68,000 seems like a deal. If you're a physical therapist or a practice, I mean, that seems like a no-brainer to me. That seems that's half the cost I expected to hear.
Yeah, yeah. And made in America, yeah, it'd be 12 to 15. These prototypes back here cost me about 8,000 each cost to me. So unfortunately, yeah, that's the way. It's got to be made in Asia and drive that cost down.
Yeah.
So you mentioned kind of those two options I think I heard. One is finding an investor, maybe, going on a real life type Shark Tank, or finding an investor panel or to help you go big. You kind of alluded to this other option of working with an existing brand, a company that may already be out there in PT clinics. Can you name any of those that you like? Have you pursued any deals and missed, or you're still looking to do that now?
Well, still looking to do it. I've approached a couple and not had the interest. There's nobody really actually targeting physical therapy for strength like this. There's a couple that are doing some cardio, which would be a new step, or SciFit. They've got those cardio machines that are good for elderly people to get in and out of, but they don't want to do strength. They are kind of dying themselves. Their industry is not that lucrative. So I'm trying to convince some of these traditional strength companies to take it on, but for them to enter the PT market, that's the jump that I'm trying to get them to make. It's all sort of hard. So I'm thinking maybe targeting some of these companies that sell like the patient tables, the tables you get on. Some of these other companies that sell like the boots and the different slings and different things that you get at a PT office, the little personal devices.
Yeah, well, I mean, my mind goes to like post-surgery stuff. I mean, people getting new knees and new hips.
Right.
There's no standard strength training for that. Or they just walk, or I don't know. What do they say?
Yeah. They're literally like a manual therapy and bands, in particular body positions and move your leg like this or that. But they're not thinking like a bodybuilder thinks. There's kind of these two worlds. You've got the bodybuilders that are literally working on building muscles in their maximum capacity, which is really healthy, but they're ignoring the small muscles that are prone to injury. And you've got the PT world that's working with all the injured muscles, all the little weird ones in your shoulder and your hips and your spine that no one knows the names of. But they're not thinking like bodybuilders where they need, stress that muscle out and get it to enhance its strength with a particular pinpoint precision. So I find myself in the middle trying to tell this story. And yeah.
Erin, it just seems to me that, some of these big national gyms, LA Fitness, Lifetime Fitness, I mean, it seems to me like those gyms might be interested in something like this, right? Because, there's a lot of folks there who are older, who are going through therapy, might have gone through physical therapy, but then they're basically told to, continue to, work on these exercises at home, right? But something like this would be ideal for those folks.
In my ideal world, I would love it to be at those gyms, and they've got a little area with trainers, and they're bringing in people, that are in that stage between PT and living a pain-free life. They need some special training. But I find that those gyms are not interested in that model of personal training somebody on the gym floor is kind of dying. But then you have these boutique gyms where you go in there and you pay quite a bit of money per month to get trained specifically. So that's a market that I hope I can start to penetrate. But right now, the only market that really screams like they need this is physical therapy.
But the hard part of that is, though, you're selling, ones and twosies into these existing companies, right? Whereas, like, man, if you could find a large company like a Lifetime Fitness to buy 1,000 of these, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's much easier for you to make that transaction happen.
Right.
Interesting. Good product. Just got to figure out a way to get it into the market and find the right investor.
Yeah. I'm thinking maybe some of these big physical therapy chains that have, 400, some 800 locations and get a few pre-orders. I'm actually working on a pre-order with one of those large personal training gyms, and I probably can't discuss details, but I'm hoping I can either sell or license a couple hundred machines. Yeah. But I don't know, man. That's they're always trying to figure out how to jump the next hurdle. And in the lean startup method, this is literally one of the biggest hurdles. Is I've got this. Can I actually sell it?
Yeah. Yep. Let's talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind sharing. So, how much sales do you have? Yearly, or let's say, and what kind of profitability do you have?
Yeah, so far still zero sales. We literally got these 10 machines done about 45 days ago, and
Real recent.
Yeah, and then that's when I sparked up conversation with this large company that wants to do licensing, and so I kind of hit the brakes and realized I need that method designed. When I sell the machine, I need a booklet or a training program that, okay, here's your machine, and now we're going to spend the next day, and I'm going to teach you how to use it properly for your patients. So
Cool.
That's where I had to hit the brakes and say, let's create that.
That's great. Yeah, my mind goes toward, influencer or perhaps celebrity type marketing. You've got big name PTs out there, like Kelly Starrett, Ben Greenfield, David Reevy. Some of these guys they got their own podcasts, and
Yeah.
kind of like what's that, George Foreman for the grill. You just have a really well-known face. Yeah, I endorse this. Yeah. Anyway, you've thought of these things. So anyway, I know marketing can be a major issue, but kudos to you for been so diligent, gone through business school, working with the university. I think you're doing a lot of the right things, and that is what it takes. I think you're on your way, Erin.
Thank you.
Nice.